Meanwhile, there's this. The Chinese government-tied hacking group known as Salt Typhoon targeting the phones of former President Trump and his family. Members of the Biden-Harris administration and State Department officials as well, all ahead of the election. The FBI reportedly has evidence that the Chinese hackers collected audio communications from the phones. They also believe that they may have had access to text messages and call logs. Joining me now is Texas Congressman McCaul. He's the chairman of the House Foreign Affairs Committee and the House Homeland Security Committee chairman emeritus. Mr. Chairman, good to see you this morning. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Maria.
So what went on with this hacking? What can you tell us?
Well, look, China has been trying to hack into public officials' phones for quite some time, including mine. But I think it's interesting how they're targeting the Trump campaign, not the Harris campaign. They clearly would prefer Harris to prevail in this election. They have gotten into sensitive data. That's about all I know. But they've constantly been trying to get into members of Congresses, especially a VP nominee and a presidential candidate. That's a gold mine for them. This doesn't surprise me at all, Maria.
So let's talk about what's going on with Tim Walz, because I know that your FBI agent back in the Chung case, this is something that you know all about, Mr. Chairman, in terms of honeypots, in terms of the tricks and trades of the Chinese Communist Party. What went on?
It's classic compromise. They get a woman to compromise. In my case, it was my FBI agent who I worked with. I broke the case on the Clinton campaign, receiving money from the director of Chinese intelligence and China Aerospace. That was 1997, Maria. Think about where they are today. And now we're seeing that, vice presidential candidate Walz had an affair with the daughter of a CCP officials. He had his affair with her, obviously compromised. We don't know how many more of these affairs he had. It certainly compromised my FBI agent to the point where he was indicted for espionage. The double agent, if you will, her name was Katrina Leong, for 20 years was a double agent working with the FBI as an asset and then turning against the United States, reporting back to Beijing. This is their MO. This is how they operate. We've seen it with Swalwell. They take these women, they compromise candidates. What they've been doing lately, Maria, is trying to get state and locals. So this makes perfect sense that they would go after a state governor, in this case Minnesota, who has become the VP nominee. I find this really disturbing. There was an internal memo at the Department of Homeland Security, a nation-state threat, they call this, because our VP nominee on the Democrat side has been compromised. They're very, very concerned about this. Why didn't this come out in the vetting process? Why is this not being reported as a story that we have a guy who could be second in line to the presidency compromised by the Chinese Communist Party?
Well, what you're saying is absolutely stunning. And I know that Marco Rubio on the Senate side is demanding that Tim Walz be investigated after this relationship with a Chinese Communist Party official's daughter was revealed. And I want to understand this. He wasn't anybody, really, when he had this affair, right? I mean, so did they target him and send this honeypot at him? And what kind of information was she able to gain from him? And by the way, do you know who paid for all these trips to China? We understand he went to China 30 times. Was the Communist Party of China paying for his travel?
Yeah, I'm sure there are private organizations driven by the CCP to get him to China and then do what they do, and that is, espionage. And then they throw women, at these people in positions of power to potentially compromise them, maybe later down the road. So imagine if he did get elected, if they have evidence of all these affairs he's had over there, maybe they got information over there that we don't know about him. Clearly, though, the fact he had this affair with the daughter of a CCP official gives me pause, gives me heartburn. I'm shocked, again, that the vetting process didn't uncover this, and it puts our nation at great risk. I think the American people really need to know what the hell's going on here with respect to China compromising now a VP candidate that could become president of the United States.
Well, I mean, Jenna Wang is the woman that you're referring to, this Chinese woman who claims that the VP hopeful, Tim Walz, showered her with gifts. But then they broke up because he was questioning her whether she was with him just to get a visa. Is that also the issue? Are they taking advantage of the U.S.'s visa process? Because that's also what I've heard from people like Mike Pompeo, who say the CCP is inside the gates of America right now on many levels, from honeypots, throwing women at potential future leaders in America, to undermining them and stealing intellectual property.
Yeah, Mike Pompeo is always spot on. Of course, that's what they're doing to get visas to come into the United States. We saw that in the Katrina Leon case, who then compromised our national security with my FBI agent. They're trying to get people in the United States that can compromise future leaders, people that they think will eventually get them to D.C. They've kind of changed their MO since the 90s when I was working this. Instead of going directly after the federal government, they'll target weaker, maybe unsuspecting state leaders that then can take them to a higher level. And they've been very successful. So if you look at the internal DHS intelligence memo, that's precisely what they talk about. Is they're targeting someone they say that they perceive can get to a higher level in D.C. They sounded an alarm within the Department of Homeland Security. It took a whistleblower to reveal this intelligence document. And Mayorkas, as always, as you know, will not produce a shred of documents, despite the request from Congress. We're not going to back off on this one until we get to the truth on it.
So the investigation is underway in terms of whether or not Tim Walz is compromised. What do you think he could do? What is he capable of potentially as vice president in terms of, favoring China? And what is China trying to do here? Dominate the United States, become the #1 superpower, overtaking the U.S. in that regard?
China wants good policies. In the late 1990s, they wanted to put money in the Clinton campaign. I prosecuted that because they wanted to impact WTO, China aerospace, and satellites. And you know what? They got all of that. With respect to Walz, I do think he's been compromised to the point, Maria, where he could be blackmailed. That is the issue. I don't think anyone could get a security clearance with this kind of background, hovering out there as a skeleton.
Wow. And real quick before you go, Mr. Chairman, a Microsoft report from last week warned that another Chinese government-linked campaign known as Spamouflage is trying to influence down-ballot races. You've been very vocal about everything you've learned about the Chinese Communist Party and how it's impacting American citizens and America's national security. As a result of that, are they targeting you? Are they trying to get involved in your re-election campaign, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, they are. Yeah. I was warned by the FBI 2 months ago. They have a book. They have a book on me going back to the 90s. With Taiwan, my positions on the committee. I've been sanctioned. You know that. And now they're targeting my re-election.
Okay. And you went to Taiwan, and while you were on the ground in Taiwan, you were surrounded by Chinese ships and flights. Is that correct? When the last time you went and took a trip to meet with the president of Taiwan?
Twice.
Yeah,
Twice. War game exercises. I was in the South China Sea recently. They warned us to turn back, saying we were in Chinese sovereign territory.
Wow.
Very hostile, Maria. And they are a threat to our national security.
Dangerous stuff here, Mr. Chairman. Thanks very much for joining us and walking us through it. We so appreciate your leadership. Michael McCaul joining us this morning. Thanks, sir. Stay with us. We'll be right back.